So this is episode 5. I don't know. Is it episode 5?
I think it's episode 5.
I believe you.
Because
whatever you say, I believe.
We skipped last week, right? That would have been episode 5.
No, episode 4 was last week. Oh, I've been putting them out a week ahead of time, so we haven't lost anything.
We didn't record last week.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Did you record something?
I don't remember. Maybe I just put it out late.
I didn't record anything.
Okay, well, now it's episode 5. Okay. Welcome
Question
to episode 5, question mark. That is, in fact, what we're going to call this episode, question mark. So, hi, it's Brittany.
And Cricket.
We're here with you today. Cricket is going to tell us some ghost stories.
Yeah.
So, you've already heard, like, Wendy and my ghost stories. Cricket, you've heard my one ghost story, right? I went through the house, yes, with my mom.
And the reflection in the TV.
Yeah, the reflection in the TV, and the cabinets opening and stuff.
Which is pretty spooky.
But I didn't feel weird. That's the whole thing. I didn't feel anything.
But you didn't really feel anything.
Also, I never saw I never saw my mom during the spooky moments. So, like, my teenage self is like, my mom is fucking with me. She's been fucking with me my whole life, so she's gotta continue
That's what moms do.
the trend. Yeah,
we love
no
them,
joke.
But...
No joke. So, we're gonna talk about your ghost. Is there, like, a preface? Like, should we know anything prior? Okay, so let's start. When you were born. Have you ever... Okay, here's the first question is, have you always believed in ghosts, or was there an experience was there a specific experience that you were like, oh shit, maybe I should look into some shit?
So, I don't really ever remember a time where I didn't believe in ghosts, but I don't really remember
you
were
never like an extreme skeptic, like ghosts can't be real. You were like, there's a possibility. And then maybe things just started to push you towards that direction of, oh, this is definitely a thing.
Definitely. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's like, looking back on my life, from this point, 25 and a half or so years down the road, it's, I sort of understand a little bit better why I had those feelings. Because for a very, very long time, just certain stories that people would tell me about my relatives, especially my female relatives, or even stories about myself that I don't remember because of my young age. I think I've always sort of had experiences. I just didn't really know what to call them.
Right.
Like, I remember, I've always really had that sort of affinity for animals and always been really, really sensitive and open to energies.
Right.
From a very, very young age, I remember, animals just being super drawn and attracted to me, even, wild animals. Yeah. Back where we lived was kind of an urban area in the middle of Charlotte. And across the street there was a wooded lot. And it wasn't a very big wooded lot, but there were a few, woodland animals and things that lived there. And there was a fox that actually used to live in that wooded lot. Aww. And I have been told that on many occasions, my mother would have to run out and grab me from the driveway and pull me back inside because there would be a deer or a fox or something that would be less than 3 feet away from me.
Oh, wow.
Like, we're just, like, sitting there, like, checking each other out. Wow. And, of course, my mother being, a mother is, especially with me being her first child, is like, oh my god, no fucking way, get that wild creature away from my daughter. So, and I remember just always sort of, like, feeling things and seeing things that weren't necessarily apparent to other people.
Do you remember your first experience? Seeing something and, like, you were like, don't you guys see that?
I don't think I really had that experience until I was about 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was one of those things where it was like, I've always sort of been a believer, but I've always been skeptic. And it's one of those things where it's like, I want to make sure that what I'm seeing is what I think I'm seeing.
Right.
So I want to make sure that the creaky door is being caused by something paranormal and not being caused by,
air currents.
An air current.
Or a window being open.
Or a slant in the house.
Exactly.
Or something like that. So I've always been the one who's been very science-based. I am a science-based witch. Like, the thing we kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
So even, I think sometimes when we were going through, like, St. Albans, I'd be like, no, I think that's a shadow from here. Or, even with some of the other evidence, I think the way I proposed it to you was, well, this could be something.
Yeah.
But it could also be something that could
you were never like, oh, this is a ghost.
Yeah. It was something that I kind of went into it as sort of your, like, barometer for energy.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it's like, I'll give you what I'm feeling, but take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just sort of how I've always approached things. Mm-hmm. And
so what happened when you were 8? Was it weird? Was it real creepy?
So my dad moved into a very old house that was built in the 1800s.
Why do people move into old houses?
Because
that's a terrible idea. It's a
They're
terrible
beautiful.
idea.
See, that is exactly what I want to do, is I want to move into an old house.
Just an old cabin.
And
people have been murdered there dozens of times. Cricket immediately snatches it off the market.
I did take you to the Druid Circle place back in the middle of the woods. But
that's fine.
There were other people there.
There were other people there.
They foiled my plans.
It was a nice place.
It was super cool.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite places. But,
so your dad bought this really old house?
Yeah, and in a very historic part near, sort of outside of Charlotte. And I pretty much had the whole upstairs to myself.
Oh.
And
fancy.
I know. So as, I would go over there, my parents are divorced. Mm-hmm. So as I would go over there and I would spend time in this old house, weird stuff just started to happen. I started to... Are they really weed whacking outside right now?
It's okay. It's fine. They have to trim things. It's fine. But now you guys
do it like 3 times a week.
It's okay. Maybe you have really vicious weeds.
Apparently.
You don't know. They could be Satan's weeds. Satan's lettuce. They're just...
It's all the rain we've been having.
Oh, that's true. It has been storming here every single day.
It has.
For the last week and a half, which is why we didn't record, because I was like, I'm not leaving my home.
No.
My power went out last week.
I saw.
Yeah, that was not good.
Yeah, that was the day when I actually, I love thunderstorms.
Yeah, I love thunderstorms too, just with my power on.
The lightning here got so bad that I actually, called my mom and I'm like, Mom, I'm scared.
The lightning struck in our neighborhood.
Yeah,
it thundered.
It struck in the parking lot out here.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because, you can feel the energy, go through the ground. I'm like, my house should not be moving. You do not need to do this storm.
Yeah, it knocked... the thunder was so loud that the vibration from the thunder actually, knocked picture frames off the wall.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It scared my cats half to death.
Oh no.
You poor kitties.
Poor kitties. It's okay. There's no more storms.
No.
This week is fine. Okay, so your dad moved in to the place. You had the whole top to yourself.
Yeah. So, it was a really old house, so I kind of attributed a lot of the noises and things like that I was hearing to, okay, well, maybe it's, we had some squirrels that moved in. Squirrels!
It's squirrels! Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe it's squirrels. Maybe it's just the fact that it's an old house.
That's why you need a cat.
Yeah.
So that you can blame all the weird noises.
My dad is allergic to cats. He does not like cats.
Oh,
yeah.
Womp womp.
Yeah. He was very sad when he heard that I got cats.
That's too bad, because there's 13 of them.
I know.
So...
No, because it's the 8 kittens.
8,
Sahira,
9, 10, 11. 11 cats.
11. Yeah, because we
can
lost
math.
A couple.
I can math.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I had 15 at one point, and then we lost a few.
Yeah.
So
that just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so I tried to write off a lot of the things that I was seeing, but I kept getting, feelings, when I was there that I wasn't alone. Like, I was being watched, all of the typical things that you, like, start to hear. And it's like,
strange noises in the night.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being watched.
Yeah. And then it started getting really strange because I literally saw things move on their own.
Ooh!
Some of my toys and things that were,
your Barbie doll starts writing 666 on the wall. You're like...
Not quite that bad. Not quite that bad. But, I mean, it was freaky to see those things move on their own, but I never felt like it meant me any harm.
You didn't feel anything bad. You didn't have, like, the weird, like, ooh, I'm gonna be threatened.
And that's when I started to get really, like, curious, because some of my toys would go missing, especially more of the dolls and things like that. And it's like, I think that's when I really started to develop that intuition, because I really started to push and say, okay, if there's something here, what can I learn about it?
Yeah.
So, and that's when I started to feel like, I started to get sort of impressions about the energy that was there. And I felt like I felt like it was a female. I felt like it was a young girl. And I think that that's one of the reasons that she was drawn to me, is because we were similar in age. And, she just wanted somebody to play with.
Yeah.
So, and that's really one of the things that really struck me. And as I would play in, like, the backyard and things like that. Like, there was an old shed back there. There was an old tire swing and things like that. And I started to find, like, little girls' toys and stuff in the backyard.
Oh, wow.
So it was one of those things where it was, like, I sort of felt a little bit validated. Like, maybe there is something to this.
Right.
So, I don't know. It was just one of those things that was... That was kind of my formative experience where I realized that something was really different.
Right.
And
I'm glad that it was a positive thing instead of, like, a negative thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I've had experiences on both sides of the spectrum.
Right.
So, and it's funny. My dad is very much like me. He's kind of an older soul. He likes things that are a little bit older, a little bit more
haunted, a little more haunted,
and a little bit more haunted. So a lot of the experiences and stuff I had happened in places where I lived.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until a few years later where I was, again, staying with my dad, and he was staying in a different place. This time it was an apartment that was in a renovated building. It was an older building, and there were shops down below, and then above, they had renovated the upstairs into apartments. And across the way, there had actually been an old jail across the street.
Oh, wow.
And when I was staying there, I was alone at the time, and I just started to feel really kind of sick to my stomach, and I didn't feel very well, and it just felt like really, really negative, and I started to get kind of scared.
Right.
And so as I was gathering up the strength to sort of get off the couch and, like, go take a walk or something, because I thought, maybe I just need to go outside, get some fresh air. I felt a pressure on my neck.
Ooh.
And my feet left the ground.
That's spooky.
And I
wait, did you stand? Or were you still sitting in the couch?
I was in the process of getting up.
And something, like, lifted you.
By my neck. I could not breathe.
I have spooky goosebumps. I have goosebumps now.
And it was not until after this happened that I started to sort of, like, explore the area a little bit more. And I realized, that used to be a jail across the street.
Oh.
So that was a little bit spooky. For me, definitely. And that was one of my first, like, negative experiences.
Right.
After that, I really started... I met a few people, in middle school, and you go through that rebellious phase. And I met some friends of mine who introduced me to Wicca, paganism, witchcraft, and I really started to devote myself and practice and study.
Who was the first person that introduced you to it?
So it was my friend, Christina.
Aww.
And it was one of those things where it's like I started to study and I started to learn, and I realized I'd been doing spells all along.
Oh, wow.
So there was a point in time, I had some book, I don't know, it was about fairies or something, and there was this little activity or something like that where you take a bowl of water and you go outside and you pick dandelions and you float dandelions on the surface of the water and you stare into the water and until you like see shapes, and it's supposed to tell you that tell you the first letter of a friend you're supposed to meet or someone you're supposed to marry or something silly like that. Little girl stuff.
So you're scrying.
I'm scrying.
Yeah.
Without knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And things like that, collecting sticks and things like that, and holding them and, really focusing on something and then, throwing it into a fire.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's just innate witchcraft that
cool.
I didn't realize that I was doing.
Yeah.
And I actually started learning on the first day of Ostara, and I know you're starting to learn some of the holidays.
That's Easter for you fuckers.
Yep. So it's all
just
about
so you know.
Rebirth, renewal, the spring equinox, and things.
You haven't seen American Gods.
I have not, but I am reading the book.
Oh, how far have you gotten in it?
Pretty far.
So you've met Ostara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She's the best. For those of you that want to become more familiar with some certain gods, I would highly recommend American Gods. It's a very good show, and it's a very good book.
I would recommend anything that Neil Gaiman has written. Yeah. One of my favorite movies ever was Stardust. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite movies.
I have not seen books. Stardust, but I have heard it's very good.
To do that.
Yeah.
It's very good.
But yes, for those of you interested in learning more about, like, all gods, because it has so many from so many different, like, oh my gosh, it's so cool that they put African and, like, Norse and Celtic, and it's, like, everything. It's so cool to see the lineage of, like, humanity and, like, the different cultures coming together. It's really, really neat. Yeah. So it's very cool.
Yeah. So I really started to study and really sort of open myself up to this kind of stuff. And some things that happened to me started to make sense because they talked about people who, were usually drawn to the craft or people who are very sensitive and people who, would walk into a room and become overwhelmed with, energy of, a fight that just happened or someone who was feeling something very strongly. So people who would just like know things and not understand why they knew them. And that's something where it's like I could... I would often walk into a room and it's like I would know words that I had no business knowing from a very young age. Like I think I used the word, there was a point where I think I was 3 years old and my sister I have a half sister and a half brother. And my half sister had done my hair. Yeah. And we were all hanging out in my dad's apartment. Me and my mom had separated by this point. Yeah. And I walk out there, and I think my dad and my brother are watching a ball game. And, I'm very proud of my hair. Because I think I look so pretty. And I think my brother, like, picked on me about it or something like that. And I just said, I'm just so... I'm exasperated.
I'm exasperated.
This 3-year-old girl... knows the word exasperated.
That's funny.
It's like...
That's hilarious.
How? That's so it's funny. Just little things like that, like, all the time. Yeah. That just, like, there's no business. There's so no funny. Way.
There's so no way. Funny.
So, like, it's... Like, stuff just kind of started to fall in place. And I really started to be pulled towards... a goddess who I think I've talked about before, Hekate. Yes. Because of her association with that sort of liminal space.
Now, did you start with Hekate?
I did.
You did?
I did.
And you were just like, yeah.
It was, I was very intimidated by her.
Oh, really?
And afraid of her. Yeah. And I kept getting signs that pulled me towards her, like the etymology of my name coming from the Greek and being derivative of her name. And then, just a lot of the different symbols and things like that I would get that were just so closely associated with her. And it's like, okay, I give up. I've been trying to resist, but I apparently do not have any control over this.
Or say. So, I have no say.
Yeah, I have no say. So, you win.
Congratulations. You have won the game.
Yep. So I devoted to myself to her at a very, very young age, and I've been working with her for a long time now. But I think that she's sort of led me towards people that have helped me sort of understand a lot of the things that I go through.
Yeah.
And sort of has helped me to explain and understand that being different is okay, and that the things that are happening to me are don't make me crazy, which I question myself all the time.
Yeah.
Does that happen? Did that really happen? Am I making this up? All the time.
Is it my brain?
Is it my
or
brain?
Or is it outside stimulus?
Yeah,
that's actually there.
And I've been to many psychiatrists, and they've diagnosed me with depression and things like that. And I've talked about this kind of stuff, and they're like, I don't think you're, making
schizophrenic.
This up. I don't think you're schizophrenic or
delusional or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just it's something that maybe science isn't able to explain yet.
Right.
And I think that there are a lot of things that we considered to be magic a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
If we had someone from, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and we showed them our phones.
Oh, they would think shit their
magic.
Pants. They would shit their pants.
Yeah.
They would call us witches. And then we'd be like, you're right! Congratulations!
But, I mean, we think of it as science and technology now.
Right, of course, yeah.
So I think that magic is really just science and technology that we can't explain yet. So that's kind of how I view magic and witchcraft and stuff like that. But, it's just... working with her has kind of opened me towards a lot of new possibilities and has helped me not be so afraid. Because there were definitely times where I definitely thought that I was crazy and I was afraid that there was something wrong with me.
Right.
And I tried my best to kind of keep my mouth shut or not talk about it or, even wish it away, close myself off to it.
Yeah.
Because I was scared of what was happening to me. Especially since some of the encounters I was having were very frightening. People who were calling my name and strange old ladies in St. Augustine coming up to me and being like, they're drawn to you.
They're drawn to you, Cricket. They like you. They want to taste the booty.
Yeah, the same time I went to my very first witch store, this weird little old lady.
That was the first time you went to a witch store?
Yeah.
And then this woman just grabs you and she's like, they like you.
Yep. Oh. In a very, very, one of the oldest cities.
Oh, no. The oldest city in America.
Yeah.
The oldest city in America.
Yeah.
Older than any of the English colonies by 200 years, I believe.
I think so.
Oh my god, the St. Augustine Museum is my favorite museum in America. I love it so much. It's so good. Oh.
It's got some really weird vibes.
Oh, the fort is really interesting. There's the oldest fort that's still, standing. It's a man-made fort. It's genius how they made it, though, because it's made partially of sand, so that if a cannonball blows into it, it just sits in there. It just makes it more fortified. Yeah.
It's kind of like when they talk about, Fort Sumter near Charleston, and they talk about how they did it with, what was it, the palmetto tree? And, the cannonballs would just sort of, bounce off, and it was impervious.
Which is genius.
Yeah.
Yep. You just gotta think on your toes, and gosh, that fort is amazing. It's so awesome.
I love St. Augustine.
That's where I went for my honeymoon.
Ooh, good choice.
And then I went there again. It was quite awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So you started to get drawn into the pagan stuff and the witchcraft stuff. And then was the spiritual activity more?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. As soon as I dedicated myself to Hekate, it was the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think that's part of it, is just I wasn't expecting how sensitive I was. But it's as soon as I was okay, I surrender, I'll work with you, she just kind of opened me up a little bit, but it was way more than I was expecting.
Right, yeah.
And, I would hear things, I would see things, I would, feel things both physically and emotionally, and where my mom lives, it's a very strange place because it's one of those things where you don't really expect this very suburban development to be, this hotbed for activity.
Right.
It was one of those things where it's she has one of those very cookie cutter sort of suburban homes.
Right.
And, that's not one where you
It's got the soccer mom vibes.
Very, Very. And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't expect paranormal activity there.
Isn't that the point of Paranormal Activity movies?
I mean,
because they're in the
bit.
suburbs. And
But usually you see, like, some creepy old house and...
Yeah, but you can take a Ouija board and summon demons anywhere you want.
I mean, that's true.
To be fair.
That's true.
You can just be like,
we're gonna have to do
demons!
An episode. We're gonna have to do a whole episode on Ouija boards, because I have opinions on Ouija boards.
Do you really?
Yes.
Are they good or bad opinions?
Depends on how you use them.
Oh, that's very...
Yeah.
You're smart.
We
You're
have
smart
to do
lady.
that a little bit closer to Samhain.
Oh, yes. Samhain. That's that thing that is Halloween, but not Halloween.
Yeah.
It's on
to
Halloween.
To Muggles, it's Halloween.
Yes. To Muggles, it's Halloween.
But I started to experience all kinds of things. I started to hear people, like, calling my name and voice mimicking. A lot of times they would mimic my mother. I remember...
That's the scariest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah?
There is a movie that came out earlier this year called Annihilation.
Yes! I actually read the book.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is there a bear in there that mimics human screams?
Yes.
Because that shit's fucking terrifying.
Yes.
So, well, it's because the bear absorbed a human that it ate.
It's a really good series, guys.
You should.
Read it.
No, don't. Unless
it takes place in Florida.
Oh! It's terrifying. Don't ever watch the movie unless you
Really?
have... It's very gory. It's
I'm not a big fan of gore.
They put the girl that the bear... Okay, there's a bear. It eats a girl. Not important. The girl has nothing to do with, like, the serious story. But eats the girl. And the girl's face is part of the bear's face. So, like, it's a normal bear face.
So,
and
like,
then,
in the Hunger Games, like in the books where they actually mutilated the corpses of the other contestants that were in the Hunger Games, they actually, like, genetically modified their corpses to turn into, like, rabid, like, dire wolf type things. But they had, like, the faces of the contestants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't really go into that in the movie.
No, because that's fucking terrifying.
It's terrifying.
No, I don't want that
absolutely
shit.
terrifying.
So yeah, that bear, part of its face, so when it roars or growls,
It
it's
sounds like
the woman's voice.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It's absolutely horrific.
That's spooky.
And Joe was the one who wanted to go see that movie. And I was like, you done fucked up, son, because now we're not sleeping tonight.
I got really excited when I
Congratulations.
heard that they were making it into a movie. But then
The ending is very...
It's...
I never read the book, so I don't know what it's about.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
Oh,
it's
I
a very...
I have the first book over there on the shelf.
It's a mind fuck. It just keeps mind fucking you.
Yeah,
so,
that's kind of how the books were.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the reason why it's weak as a movie is because they didn't intend to make sequels.
Ah, okay.
So you'll get that.
I think it's a trilogy.
It's a trilogy. It is a trilogy. Because I looked it up afterwards. I was like, what? This is it? That's all? And so you're very confused. You're like, what the fuck is going on? And then it ends, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so...
It's a very small book. Oh, it's over there on the shelf.
It's not very many pages, but it's essentially about how this... First of all, there's gotta be more backstory into it, because I have to say, the initial part of the whole thing, the Southern Reach, that's what they call it. So first off, if it just lands and hits a lighthouse, they know about it. But they don't, like, go in and explore when it's just a lighthouse. Like, why didn't they do that? It probably explains in here, doesn't explain in the movie.
They actually sent several teams into that area.
Well, they did, but, like, it's growing, so it had to start from, like, something small. So why didn't they, when it was just small, send some? The way that they make it...
but those teams didn't survive to be able to come back, and it just keeps growing, and they can't get any good data on it.
It just doesn't make any sense why Natalie Portman is, like, the special one that she gets to come back.
Well, because it's Natalie Portman.
I guess it is. I guess it's because she's
special.
She's special, and she has the love of her husband to sustain her. It doesn't matter anymore. It's, I will say, at the very end, it's interesting. We'll talk about it after the podcast, so I don't want to have any spoilers. But there was just a lot of questions. I was like, why didn't they? Now, they do say, okay, we've sent 12 teams so far.
Okay, that's good.
And I was like, the bigger it gets, the more people you need to send. You just need to send, like, however many people can hold hands and walk through, and then just keep walking and keep going forward in and further in.
Now I'm hearing, like, The Chain by Fleetwood Mac playing in my head.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, The Chain. Exactly. Everyone needs to hold hands and just go into the center. And that's all that needs to happen. And then I was like, why don't they send fucking nukes in there? Why don't they send tanks? Why is there not a tank that just went into the lighthouse and just demolished it?
I think they may have sent a tank or something like that there before in the book.
They don't explain what happens to tanks.
Been a few
it's
years.
Only people that they send.
It's been a few years since I've read it, so
I bet there's a lot more explanation
to
Annihilation in here than there was in the movie is crazy. Mm-hmm. See, and there's more than 4 women in the movie.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. There's more than 4 women in the team. Because Natalie Portman has to survive.
You know.
She needs more people to die.
Yeah.
But
they want to up the gore factor and have more deaths.
You know, actually, one of the deaths is very beautiful.
Yeah?
And she turns into a plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful way that she turns into a plant. Like,
I'll have to watch it and
it starts to peek out of her skin or whatever. And then she starts to grow leaves. Mm-hmm. And then she blooms. And it's like her whole body blooms. Like, it's flowers everywhere. And I'm like, damn, that's the fucking way to go. I'd go that way.
I'd go that way.
I'd fucking turn into a plant for eternity.
Hell yeah.
It's like, it's dope. It's very, very cool. So I was impressed with it. But then, like, the gore, like, the bear, why? Nightmares. Just nightmares. And, like,
with its voice mimicking.
That's just the thing. The voice mimicking is what fucks me up. And also, I hate birds. I know it's a very strange thing.
Thank you.
Do you also hate birds?
I also hate birds.
Oh, thank God. Oh, the reason why I hate birds is voice mimicking. Because it sounds like they're laughing at me every time I go outside and I hear them.
See, I had a very violent attack from a bird when I was young.
A chicken probably attacked you or something like that.
No, it was a goose.
I fucking hate geese. I'm sorry. Everyone on my stream knows that I hate geese.
It was a nasty, disgusting Canadian goose.
Ugh. Geese are terrible. They're the fucking worst. I would hit them. I would run over their bodies if I could multiple times. Yeah. They're not endangered. Fuck
I have
them.
a friend who's like that about possums. But possums
are nice. Oh my God. No, I hate birds because every time I would wake up in the morning to go to school, I'd have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's a fucking horrendous time to wake up.
Same. Yeah.
I would get up, go out of the door, and I would be downstairs waiting for the bus. And I would hear the fucking birds start to chirp. And I'm like, why the fuck are you awake? It is like 5:35 in the morning. Why are you awake?
Oh, you should not live here.
No. My God, do you have them?
Mm-hmm. The birds actually start chirping out here at like 3 in the morning.
No. Oh, I've heard that though. I've heard some shit like going on at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, what the fuck is going on, birds? Yeah. Do you not know it's nighttime? The sun is not up yet.
But I mean, I live in a very old building here. Yeah. So we have a lot of little nooks and crannies in this old brick building that used to be a textile mill. Yeah. For the birds and the bats to live in. So
it's insane.
It's a thing.
Bats are nice though.
I love bats.
Birds can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan.
No.
They eat the bugs. That's about all the good they do.
I guess.
Yeah.
I like bugs though. I don't like mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are the only
some
thing
of the
that
bugs
I don't
I'm
like.
not okay with. Like
some people are like
and
weird
ticks.
about.
I'm not.
Well, ticks are scary though because they want to eat you.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to eat me without my consent.
No.
If I had to consent, then I'd be like, okay, I'll just never consent to the bug. But I can't do that. The bug just wants to eat. So, where were we? About before birds.
Disembodied voices.
Disembodied voices.
So we were talking about disembodied mimicking voices.
Mimicking voices, yeah. Specifically your mom, which is horrifying.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yep, so they would mimic my mom, and a lot of times they would like, call my name in a way
not in your mom's name. This is not okay.
Yeah, they would call my name, like my full name,
Did you say
I was in trouble.
This is not okay to them?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'd be like.
It was to the point where it was so real, I stopped what I was doing.
Ooh, I would too.
And I was home alone at the time.
Ooh, no.
And,
that's when you need a cat.
We had a dog by that point.
Oh.
And, she looked up because she heard it too.
Oh. Oh, that's not okay.
So she and I went and investigated all the rooms.
That's nice to have a dog, though, to go in there not by yourself.
Yeah. And no one was there. I walked around outside. Mm-mm. No one was there. No car in the garage, nothing.
No mom. No mom. But you hear the mom. No.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
That's fucking terrifying.
So that happened. That's when stuff, like, first started. So
that was early on.
That was early on.
Yeah.
Stuff got a little bit more intense later on down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in a 3-bedroom. You know, my mom would have the master to herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was on one side of the house. And then on the other side of the house were 2 smaller bedrooms. And I had one. And then the other one she used as her office because she often worked from home.
Right.
So that's where the computer was.
Okay.
And me being a typical millennial, I spent a lot of time on the computer as a kid.
Yeah. We used to have a computer room.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. That's exactly right.
Now we just call them offices. But we had the computer, the room for the computer.
Yep.
Nothing else. Even if we didn't work from home, it's not an office. It's a computer room.
That's right.
Whew.
So I would be in the computer room.
Yes.
You know, on Instant Messenger or whatever. With
oh my god,
friends.
AIM.
Yes.
It will.
Yep. Or I did MSN Messenger.
Oh, I never did that. See?
Yeah?
I was too old. It's too old. It's 5 years, 5 whole years apart. 4.5, whatever.
That's fine.
It's fine. It's just, I knew people were using MSN, but at that point, at my old, ripe age of 16, I was like, I'm not changing my ways. You can't make me get off of AOL.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we got MySpace and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, Open Diary, and then MySpace, and then Facebook. LiveJournal.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Open Diary, and then LiveJournal, and then MySpace, and then Facebook. And now
fanfiction.net.
And now Tumblr. And fanfiction.net. Ooh, yes. Thank you, fanfiction.net. I just wanted to say thank you, because you do great service, great work.
You do.
But thanks.
So I would spend a lot of time on the computer in the computer room, or the office, as we call it now.
Yeah.
And I just started to, like, experience things. I would get that really uneasy feeling where I just didn't feel safe, felt like somebody was watching me.
Mm-hmm,
and then physical things started to manifest.
No.
So I would see, like, this dark, like...
figure.
It didn't start out as a figure. It started out as just sort of a really dark shadow.
Like just a general shape, and you're
just
like,
a general
that's
shape.
A little weird.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's odd. I don't like that. And then it turned into a figure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to hear sounds. I started to hear a lot of growling.
Mm-hmm.
I started to hear a lot of cussing.
Mm-hmm.
I started to hear a lot of just really stuff that made me really uncomfortable. And it was a very tall figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I always got this really, like, I want to say masculine energy, but I feel like it was not something that was limited to a human binary sort of gender.
Right. It was just very negative.
Very negative and very imposing, and something like you go somewhere and you see someone who's been, like, trained in combat and has seen some shit.
Very authoritative.
Yes, very. And I mean, this thing must have been 6.5 feet at least.
Oh, wow. I say, oh wow, but, like, my brothers are, like, 6.5 feet tall.
But I mean, I'm the shorty.
Yes. I'm the shortest person in my family.
And this is while I was still growing.
Oh.
So I hadn't hit quite 5 feet yet. Yeah.
Oh, little baby cricket.
Just
a little wee bairn. Little wee bairn.
Knee-high to a grasshopper.
Yeah.
So I started to, hear all this really crazy stuff that just made me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And,
straighten up, young missy.
I know.
Clean your room.
I know.
That's what it was saying.
Right. Then it started to make me feel really sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, physically violently ill and paranoid.
Would you consider, like, most extremely negative forces kind of
they
do
make
that?
Me nauseous.
Yeah.
And they make it hard to breathe.
Yeah.
For me. That's how it tends to manifest. I feel a pressure in my chest.
Yeah.
Like, almost like somebody's, like, got a vice grip or sitting on my chest and they're just tightening and tightening and tightening. And a lot of times I'll feel My hair will stand up on my arms.
Yeah.
And I'll get this, like, pressure in the back of my head, and I'll start to feel very nauseous. And I am sensitive to barometric pressure as well. Like, I can tell when a storm is coming in because I'll get a headache.
I don't get a normal headache, but if it is a very, like, low pressure system, I will be able to tell because my sinuses will yeah.
But it manifests in like the actual physical weather would manifest in a very different part of my skull.
Interesting.
Than something that was, like, that would tend to manifest, like, a little bit up in my forehead and more in, like, the sinus area and, like, top of my head.
Well, I never get sinus problems, so I know it's going to be a bad storm if it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with, like, a little bit of rain or scattered showers, it's fine. I don't get affected. But if it's, like, a hurricane...
You can feel it.
I can feel it.
Yeah. I can also feel it in my joints, but that's because I'm an old person and I have fibromyalgia.
I'm so old. People, like, talk about their knees, like, oh, my knees are aching. I know there's going to be a storm. And I'm like, how do you guys feel that? They're bone. You know what I mean?
I can feel it, like, in my hands, in my elbows.
Like, they just
in my knees, especially my ankle, especially my left ankle, because I sprained it really, really, really bad when I was young. Yeah. And my tailbone.
Did you break your tailbone? My friend actually broke her tailbone because in high school, a person pulled her chair out from under her as she was trying to sit down. Don't do that, kids. Don't do that. That's a terrible prank.
I accepted a dare from...
What did you do? What is this? So a dare from a boy?
I was very much like a rough and tumble, like, tomboy.
Really?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. So I was constantly, like, ruining clothes, especially shoes, down at the creek.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me sad for your shoes.
Yeah.
Shoes are important.
My mother was so mad.
Oh. So what was this dare involved? What
there was an old rope swing that went over...
Oh, this already sounds terrible.
Yeah. Went over part of the creek.
Okay.
And it was a wider bend in the creek, but the creek was still, like, 7 feet set in to, like, the earth. So you had to go down, like, 7 feet. We had to crawl down the bank and then crawl up the other side of the bank.
You fell. You tried to go across and you fell.
No.
No.
So there was this old rope swing, and the swing set down in to the creek, like, inside the banks.
So it's kind of like...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's very deep set into the earth.
It's deep, and then you have the rope.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So there's only a few inches of water there, but because of the way that the erosion happened, it was very deep set in, even though there's not very much water through there.
Right.
So somebody had set up a swing, tied up an old, like, rope and put a board or something on this old tree that was on the bank. And this guy dared me to go from the top of the bank on the swing. And me, not thinking about it, didn't realize that the rope was longer than the bank. And I immediately fell flat on my butt. Like, just dropped on my ass. And skidded down the creek. There were actually, like, big old roots and stuff that we used to climb up the other side of the bank. Broke the roots that were probably about as big around as my arm.
You broke them with your butt.
With my legs.
Yeah.
And then went and hit the other side of the creek with my tailbone first, and like a pendulum, kept hitting my tailbone back and forth on the sides of the bank.
That's funny.
When I got off of this swing, this boy was no longer there because he hightailed it home because he knew I was going to kick his ass.
That's funny, but also sad. Yes. I'm sorry you might have broken your tailbone.
Yes. So, if you see me, I cannot sit flat on my butt. I have to sit forward or to one side or the other.
Yeah.
Because I cannot sit back on it because it hurts. Because I never went to the doctor and I never told my mom about it because
when you don't go to the doctor, terrible things happen.
Things happen.
Bones just don't go right.
Yeah.
And then you're like, Mom, I think something's wrong with me. And then she takes you to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I can break it again. And I'm like, that was very painful, and I didn't tell anyone about it, and I don't really want to have a cast, and it works fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
So
I might have like a bone spur or something back there.
Probably.
Yeah.
Or something's just
not quite
straight.
Yeah.
It'll poke your muscles, your butt muscles.
Yeah.
No.
It's caused a lot of problems with my hips and my legs and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
but
hopefully maybe one day you'll
get
it fixed.
Maybe I'll break it again.
when you have really good insurance, just be like, Doctor, there's been something that's been bothering me for most of my life. Could you just get an x-ray of my asshole?
It wouldn't be the first time.
Could I just get an x-ray of my butt?
I was constantly, falling off of things. I can't tell you the number of times I fell off swings as a kid. It's a wonder I'm not dead.
The only thing I've ever done with swings is, when you're a kid and you try to go high and high and high and then jump off and land on your feet, which is the fucking worst idea. You should never do that. That can break your ankles.
Or you try to flip over the bar.
Yeah. I've done that once. I did
terrifying.
it. And
do it.
I was like, I realized if I kept going, I would hit my head, so I can't do that again.
Yeah.
So I stopped that after. I was like, one time I've done that before. I've never done it again. But yeah, no, oh Lord. Children are so dumb.
Yeah.
So, being sensitive to storms, being sensitive to energies and things like that.
It manifests as a very different physical sensation from
from feeling something
else that
be there.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I can kind of it doesn't feel the same, so I feel like it's not connected to the weather.
Right.
And it only manifests in certain physical locations.
Right. So it's something that is tied to a place, and you're like, I only feel this when I'm here. Mm-hmm. And obviously you were living there, so you would have storms, and you're like, that other feeling is still there. It's just not the same as the storm feeling or whatever. Yeah. I get that.
So, it would just, that's sort of how it manifested. And, as I grew older, things started to get a little bit worse. There was a period for about 1.5 years where every morning at 3:45 in the morning, there would be a rapping on my window that would be very loud and very insistent. Every morning for
at
1.5 years. 3:45 in the morning.
Were you by yourself?
Yes.
Oh, no.
On the window to my bedroom.
No.
That would be a really, really long prank for someone to do. And I would many a times jerk open the blinds.
It'd be like
no one would be
there.
And the sound is still coming from the window.
I would start naming that ghost and just be like, Chad, you are annoying the fuck out of me today. Can we please not do this? I'm trying to go to sleep.
And then, after 1.5 years, it just, stopped. But my mom has told me...
Because Chad realized you were gonna go the fuck away. You were like, Chad.
I was gonna get Hekate on his fucking ass, so he hightailed it out of there.
Yeah.
But... there have been some other people who've reported that activity. My mom has said that she's heard it a couple times recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. I asked her if it was around 3 or 4 in the morning, and she said, yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh shit, Mom.
Yeah. And then there was another friend of mine who actually lived across the street, and his family owned some land. It owned all of the land that our houses were built on.
Oh, wow.
And they had... There's a creek, like I said, running back behind my house. And creeks are very much like energy centers. Not so much just for the paranormal, but also for just life in and of itself. You know, water is life-giving. So everything is drawn to the water for sustenance.
Everyone that's carbon-based needs water to live.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I feel like in the afterlife, the paranormal, there's still that very much that energy line that's connected with creeks and rivers and sources of water. So there's that. And then there is also this part of the land that my friend's family has lived on for generations.
Mm-hmm.
And back behind their house, there's an area they call Quartz Hill.
Oh.
And back up behind his family's house
Mm-hmm.
was this wooded lot that had been, they tried to put a stage up there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, they just, I don't know, it was abandoned. So there's still abandoned stage. So, of course, we all go walk up there because we're, teenagers.
Yeah.
Just to go explore because it's right in our backyard.
Yeah.
And, there was this, pillar of quartz that came up out of the ground, 2 or 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
They did a geological survey of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago that said that quartz deposit went down for several miles.
Wow. That's crazy.
Straight, that exact vein of quartz.
Yeah.
They said it was one of the largest quartz deposits on the eastern seaboard.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So as we know, quartz holds energy. I mean, they use silicates as part of programming for computers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We have been able to quantify the amount of, information that quartz can actually hold scientifically.
Yeah.
So because of that, I think that it holds a lot of energy for, places and things as well.
Yeah.
So we have that going for it as well.
Right.
Plus this creek. And we also have this history of this family living on this land for many generations. Mm-hmm. I have actually seen one of his ancestors' ghosts before.
Wow.
Yeah. So
did you see it and then you just happened to mention it and they were like, what the fuck? That's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was kind of younger. She looked very much like him in the face. She was about 8.
Right.
And one of my ex-boyfriend's mom saw her too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was at a different point in time, but she saw her too.
Oh, wow.
And then, there's a lot of stuff going on with his family, paranormal-wise.
Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit later. But back in my house, I started to get bitten and scratched. Again, there was that, choked and feeling of just, oppressiveness to the point where I didn't want to be in my house.
Yeah.
So, as soon as I could drive, I would stay out for as late as possible and get, yelled at for breaking curfew a lot because I didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends lived in the same neighborhood, including a guy I ended up dating for 4 years, 4 years. Mm-hmm. And he experienced a lot of the same things too. And like I said, his mom, actually saw the same apparition that I did.
Right. Yeah.
And I think she actually might have, I don't know if it was her or if it was a different female spirit who was kind of youthful. Mm-hmm. But there was a point where I think it was a Samhain and it was me and one of my friends, a couple of my friends, and we went down to the creek. Mm-hmm. There's a sandbar down there at the creek, and we actually set up for Samhain.
Oh, wow.
And did a ritual down there. And my friend Christina, who kind of led us because she was sort of the one that introduced us. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I had angina. But she decided we were going to astral project for the first time because that's very.
You just decided. You're like,
that's what I decided.
I think we'll just astrally project ourselves into the cosmos today.
So she sort of led us in this astral projection meditation.
Interesting.
And I encountered this a female younger spirit when I was there, and because I think she was lost and afraid, she attached to me and ended up kind of living as a parasite and went home with me, and I had to kick her out. And no, you need to go.
Have you ever felt two ghosts fighting for a space?
No, that I haven't felt.
Interesting. I wonder if ghosts just interact with each other like normal people. You know what I mean? Because they inhabit the same plane of existence.
Yeah.
And so that's why they don't really fight.
Maybe.
Necessarily. So that's just a thought that I had.
Yeah.
Ruminating. I was
So there was that. There was also a few of my friends, and I wasn't actually present for this one, but they used to go out and do this, manhunt in the middle of the night, where everybody, where it was almost like hide and seek, but it was in the dark.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And there's a specific, like, term for it. If anybody knows what it is, definitely let us know.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember what it is.
I know what you're talking about, but I just...
And, it was all guys at this point.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't invited.
Oh,
And, they were all sitting out there in this field next to his house, and, they saw this cloaked, very tall, masculine figure standing out in a field.
Yeah.
And he was very dark, but he was glowing blue.
Oh.
Every single one of them saw it.
Wow.
There was another time when I was also not present for this one, but it was my friend whose family had lived on the farm for generations, and a couple of our other friends who were in that circle. And one of them was late going up there. They were going up to Quartz Hill, so they were walking up through the woods, and they saw them, like, walking up there, and there were 3 figures. And, so I think that they asked, so somebody else had followed up behind. And when they got up there, it was only my friend, I'll call him Brian, and my other friend, I'll call him Tom.
Okay.
So they asked where the third friend was, and they said, "What do you mean? It was only the 2 of us."
Oh.
And it was my friend Brian, whose family had lived on the farm for generations. His friend and his grandmother, who saw the 3 figures walking up there. And then, so they were super creeped out by that.
Yeah.
And immediately went home.
Yeah. I don't doubt it.
I've been up there. I've heard lots of growling again. I've just felt this general, like, uneasiness. And I think it's just, there's something that's drawn to that land that's very negative. I'm not quite sure what it is.
Interesting.
But I feel like there's a lot of different spirits there. Just because
Well, yeah,
there's so
because
much
it's their
energy.
family. It's their family,
too, yeah.
and then the creek, and then the quartz. It's just like the whole thing. It's like there's ancestral spirits.
Yeah.
You know, there's spirits drawn by the energy of the area.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, too, where it's like, I've talked a lot about the negative experiences in my house. I've also heard mimicking, my dog used to do this thing where she would, like, cough if she wasn't getting attention. So she would, like, fake cough.
That's cute.
Just to get attention so that you would come and check on her and, like, baby her a little bit.
So then the spirit started doing that?
Yes.
That's fucked up.
While I was sitting there looking at my dog, and she looked at me, and then she looked in the same direction that I looked.
Oh!
So, like, it was just super spooky.
Yeah. That's when you need to get another dog. So you can blame it on the second dog.
I like how your solution to everything is dogs.
Animals. Just
Animals,
more
yes.
pets. Just more of them.
Speaking of, when I was, when my dad lived in that really old house, the first house, he married a woman, and she moved in, and she actually had a dog.
Okay.
And there was one point where the dog would just, like, go nuts and bark and bark and bark and bark and bark. And the dog was usually okay around us. He would bark maybe once or twice when we came in because he was excited. But if it was somebody new, especially somebody, like, that he didn't recognize, like, he would get really upset.
Yeah.
And his kennel was right there at, like, the end of the stairs. And he would look up at the stairs sometimes and bark and bark and bark and bark and bark at something that was not there.
No.
Yeah.
When the dogs start barking at my house, I'm like, you better not be fucking with me right now. Like, and then...
If there's a spirit here, you better be paying rent.
Yes. The dogs, because there should be... My house is new. Okay? It has some water behind it, but you need to chill out.
Yes.
I don't want my dogs barking. Because they scare me. They will literally scare me. They will just be, like, sitting there. We'll both be laying down, on the couch or whatever. And both of them will just immediately start barking. That's when I know it's fucked up, because they both start barking at the same time. And I'm like, calm down, children.
Yeah.
Calm.
I've never felt anything in your house. I've had your dogs do that while I was there by myself, and it's weird.
It's because they see so well.
Yeah.
So corgis aren't trained to be really good hearing dogs. They're meant to have very good vision, and their smell is okay. It's like normal dog. It's not like exceptional like a beagle or a bloodhound or anything.
Yeah.
But they can see people across the street, and if they see a shadow or people walking on the other sidewalk,
it freaks them out.
They will go off.
Yeah.
So it's just like if they see anything, they can see flies. When the lights are off, they can see flies in the house, and they'll follow them and they'll snap at them. And I'm like, why? Don't do this. No, no. So it's just, oh my god.
Yeah.
So dogs are good sometimes, but also terrible and terrifying.
They can definitely freak you out. There were a couple of times where my dog, Chelsea, who I had at my mom's house, she would just get like really upset and she would refuse to go places. Like she was very uncomfortable.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen where there's certain like
and one of those places was the computer room and like that hallway that led back to it. She did not like it. And that's where I felt the energy the most. So it was really, really strange. And sometimes she would just like growl look towards that way and just growl. And it would just be one of those things where it's like, nope, gotta go.
Yeah.
Going for a walk.
That's so crazy. Oh my gosh.
So that would happen. There were a couple times when, we went up to Quartz Hill and I would just like see things in the trees that, it was just really strange.
Why is that person hanging there? Yeah, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I would... I'm okay without Hekate.
I saw a lot of...
I'm seeing fine.
Like spectral, like shadowy dog figures as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which was really strange. But I never got like a good feeling from them, which is strange because I work with Hekate. So my first assumption is, oh, they must be associated with her, but I never got that.
Yeah. You're like, no, they seem pretty angry.
So it must be some kind of weird manifestation of whatever energy is there. But yeah, it was just all kinds of things. Okay.
Cricket just got real, like, she started moving her hands, and she just got real serious, and now she's doing a hand-holding session.
Yes, I'm holding my own hand, because, this next one really freaks me out.
Okay. So, oh my god, I'm ready. I'm ready to have the goosebumps.
So, I'm a giant nerd and a gamer, and I would often go over to my friend Brian's house, who lived across the street, with my boyfriend at the time and a couple other people who were in our group and would hang out. I was like the only girl.
Oh, that's okay. Me too. For the longest time.
Yeah.
Me too.
But we used to go and we used to play like hours and hours and hours of WoW or Neverwinter.
I never played WoW. Oh, but I played Neverwinter Nights.
Oh, yes. We didn't play Neverwinter Nights. We played like the new Neverwinter that came out a few years ago.
That's because I'm old. And Neverwinter Nights is older than WoW. Yeah. It came out a year before WoW came out. I played the beta for WoW.
Okay.
And then I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Because still, that was so early in internet life that because I was a teenager and I was a girl playing a video game, literally every single person would freak out if there was a girl playing, and it just got very old, and I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I will leave
like,
this
it used
realm.
to have, like, part of my name or whatever, like, in my username or something like that. Like, my first name or a nickname or something. And it got to a point where it's like, I knew I couldn't do that anymore, and I had to pick something that was unisex, because you would, even if you weren't on, like, microphone or anything like that, people would literally target you and just, like, follow you around, steal your kills, like, harass you.
Yeah. Well, people wouldn't harass me, but they would just, like,
I got people,
freak out.
Like, trying to whisper me and DM me for, like, pictures of my tits or my feet.
Some people would DM for that. But, like, overwhelmingly, it was just like...
Yeah.
That actually doesn't bother me so much. Like, that doesn't bother me so much, because I expect that at this point.
Yeah.
But what would upset me...
I get lots of people, anytime I post a picture, like a selfie on Instagram or something...
Let me see your titties!
It's not tits. It's actually feet.
Oh, yeah.
I get people asking me for feet
like
pics
a huge
every
thing.
time. Mm-hmm. Every time. So
just Google, like, terrible feet and then, like, send that to them. Yeah. Yeah. But no, it would be backseat gamers. Like, do you know how to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how to do this? I get
that a lot, too.
That was the one thing. That pisses me off more than anything else. Because I'm like, bitch, I was in the beta before.
That they don't, like, that I am know.
Older than you. Like, don't...
Yeah, but even with my own group, like, there would be a lot of times when we would play, when they would play, like, multiplayer games like Halo or Borderlands or something like that, and it's like, they wouldn't let me play.
Oh, I always got to play things.
That pissed me off. Yeah. That pissed me off. So I stopped hanging out with them after a while. Because I was like, no, I want to play Halo, damn it.
I don't want to play Halo. I used to, like,
play I was really into, like, the lore and stuff like that. And it looked really interesting.
You should talk to Joe about it, because he would literally get a hard-on talking about... He fucking loves Halo.
But I never got to play. So it was, like, I never really got to,
forced
experience it.
I was forced to play.
It was one of those things. I want to play, like, solo and stuff now and just, like, get the lore.
Joe didn't force me to play, but... I had my first roommate outside of moving out of my house. Mm-hmm. He was huge into playing first-person shooters, and so we would go to house parties, and I would be forced to play.
Oh,
and because, like, literally there would be 12 people there, and they were like, okay, everyone's gonna play Halo, because we would make it a drinking game.
Oh,
and it's a terrible idea.
See, the people I would hang out with, they were such nerds, they would not drink.
Oh,
even to the point where this guy... His parents would actually invite us to parties, and me and my boyfriend would be the only ones who would show up to drink at these parties.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
We had a house drink called the Retcon.
Oh,
it was
funny.
A good party.
That's funny.
His parents were Giants nerds, too.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
And actually, speaking of that brings me around to the point that I wanted to talk about before, which is one of the spookier experiences I had.
Yeah.
So, we would have these big sleepovers and stuff, where we would all just, like, stay over and play video games, especially, like, MMOs and stuff, until we would pass out.
Yeah.
And, during one of these sessions, I had been, I've had a lot of chronic health issues and stuff like that. And in my life that I'm still kind of dealing with a little bit. It's one of those things that I'm just kind of learning how to live my life in a way that works with my disadvantages. So I was very new into that and still kind of working through all of that. And I got up to go to the bathroom.
If you couldn't tell. They decided there was not enough devil's lettuce gone.
No, so they had to come back for more.
They're coming back for more. So
they want to make sure they get rid of all of the dandelions so young girls cannot, like, scry in the water.
That's what they do.
Yes.
No demon shall be summoned here. It's fine. It's fine. Okay.
No future witches made
No
here.
future witches. No future witches. Okay. So continue.
So I went up and went to the bathroom, and I just, like, felt really drained. I didn't feel very good. But, I mean, I'd been hanging out with boys, we'd been eating junk food and playing video games for a long time, so I'm like, maybe I just need to go home and sleep.
Yeah.
And, I got up, and I looked in the mirror of this bathroom.
No, Cricket!
That was downstairs.
Why would you have to say mirror? I don't like mirrors. I already don't like it. No, Cricket. Okay,
And
just say it real fast so I don't have to process it.
I looked like I was terminally ill.
Ooh.
I looked absolutely sick. My skin was sallow.
I thought you were going to see something. Oh. Don't say
my
that
own
shit.
reflection.
Well, yes. Okay.
Was the scary part.
Okay. All right.
It was like a giant manifestation of all of my fears.
Yeah.
And I just looked ill.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where it frightened me. So I went out and, I said, do I look okay? And my boyfriend at the time said, you look kind of tired, but I mean, you look okay. Yeah. And I went and I, like, I got my phone and I, like, looked in the camera on my phone. I looked fine. I had a compact in my purse. I checked the mirror in the compact in my purse and I looked fine.
Oh.
That's
a fucked up mirror.
I even went back and looked in that mirror later
And you
I
were
looked
fine.
It wasn't the lighting. It wasn't... No. So, me being me, I had been pretty open with my boyfriend about a lot of the things I'd experienced, because he lived on the property too, and he, he knew the guy who lived there for a long time.
Yeah.
I think I called him Brian.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use his real name.
Brian.
Yeah.
That's his name.
So, he knew Brian for a long time, so he'd experienced stuff like that. Plus his mom had experienced stuff. I had experienced stuff. He'd experienced stuff. So I was very open with him about a lot of the stuff I'd seen. Plus I was kind of teaching him a lot about paganism and witchcraft and stuff at the time too. So I felt comfortable talking to him about that. And, he said, you need to go talk to Brian's mom and her husband. So they lived in a different house across town. Okay. And I had already kind of talked to Brian, because Brian actually would go back and forth between his grandmother's house and his mom's house, just back and forth depending on where he wanted to be.
Okay.
It was just a very fluid dynamic. They were just chill. He would go hang out here for a while. He would go hang out there for a while. Yeah. And I'd gone over there. He had actually experienced the knocking on the window too. Oh. He experienced a lot of the same stuff that I had experienced, like shadow figures and things like that. Very tall man.
Well, the boys all saw the tall man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He started to experience them in his mother's house, which was across town.
Why? That's his family. That's some fucked up.
He took a piece of quartz.
Why the fuck would you do that?
He took a piece of quartz.
Without cleansing.
So
you need the sage.
I went into his room and I started to like cleanse the room. And I kept going back to this one corner because it wouldn't cleanse. It felt very dark and negative. And I looked down and there's a lump of quartz right there. And I said, Brian, where'd you get this from? And he said, I picked it up from my grandma's house. And I said, you need to put that back.
That needs to go.
And I actually picked up the rock. It was ice cold.
Oh.
And the room was like, when you have like 4 people in a little teeny tiny ass room with computers running, you have the fan in the window and it's hot. It's hot. Yeah. This rock was ice cold.
Ooh, no.
We're all sitting there sweating. This rock is ice cold. And I told him, touch this. And he said, that's freaky. And immediately... Well,
yeah, it's freaky.
Yeah. I was like, why the fuck did you take it? And he said, because it was pretty. And I said, you need to put that back.
Precious child.
We literally drove over there in the middle of the night to go put it back.
Oh, I would too.
Yeah. And after we did that, stopped.
Oh, what do you know?
Yeah.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So this had been after all of that. So... Brian's mother will not go into his grandmother's house.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't go there.
Her husband at the time would not go into the house. And his reason was the reason that my boyfriend at the time wanted me to go talk to him. So, the day that he and Brian's mother were supposed to get married, they weren't allowed to see each other. So she was off somewhere with her bridal party getting ready. He's over at Brian's grandparents' house getting ready.
This house that you went in?
Yes. And he went into the same downstairs bathroom that I went into. And he has always had issues with anger and rage. He looked up into the mirror into the bathroom, and his face was full of anger and rage and a twisted grin that looked like he was insane. He was so angry he punched the mirror because he was so terrified of it. Yeah. And since then, he would not go back in there. And he told me this story, and I literally had tears running down my face because I told him it's exactly what happened to me. Yeah. But it manifested as my worst fear, which is being so ill.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
I don't...
but... the mom, his mom never had an experience. She just won't go in there.
She had experiences, but she won't talk about them.
Okay.
I never got her to talk about them.
Okay.
And she's one of those where it's like, she changes the subject when it comes up.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to talk about whatever happened to her.
No, she probably doesn't want to remember.
Yeah.
No.
So
it's probably worse than knocking on the window.
Yeah, that was one of my more frightening experiences. You know, even more so, I think, than the being choked and scratched and bitten. And,
well, yeah, because it's your worst fear.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey,
and
I'd like to remind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things, too, where it was like, it literally, across decades, this other person had something similar happen to them, too. So after that, I never used that bathroom again.
You're like, I'll come to this house, but I ain't gonna go to your bathroom.
I'll go piss in the woods first.
Yeah. I'll just go across. My house is right there.
Yeah. I'll just walk the quarter mile to my house. It's fine. It's fine.
Just go beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
And hold it.
Yeah.
Don't drink too much Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Oh. No, I think I'll pass the Mountain Dew and do those things.
I'm fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
So that was probably the spookiest.
That's definitely one of the spookiest.
Yeah.
I until possibly like St. Albans.
Really? That was the spookiest?
And I think there was actually another place that there was a different friend of mine, and she and I aren't in touch anymore. But she lived across the street from this old boys' school, and it used to be a vocational school for boys.
St. Albans was also a vocational school for boys.
And then later it turned into a reformatory school. And behind the original property, it is still a reformatory school for boys. So, you know, the people who are, you know, literally killing their parents and, you know, things like that, committing horrible, horrible crimes, this is where they get sent.
Yeah.
But even before that...
you just knew something was, like, weird about
I didn't
that
like the
place.
place. I mean, it's all abandoned, so, I mean, there's that initial, like, creep factor.
You know, I don't get weirded out by abandoned places.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm gonna fall through the floor. Or, like, breathe asbestos.
That probably wouldn't occur to me till, like, I coughed or something, and I'm like, oh, yeah, the air is probably not great in here.
You know, black mold.
Yeah, if I smelled something weird. But just seeing a place doesn't spook me out.
Okay.
Even knowing if it's, like, a spooky... Like, going to the sanatorium...
The building was actually really beautiful.
Actually, it was really nice. Other than the fucking graffiti. But, yeah.
That's always really sad.
Yeah.
And this place was actually covered in graffiti and stuff, too. So, my friend actually lived walking distance from this old boys' school. And I think it was close to Halloween. And it was a bunch of us girls. We were all staying the night at her house. And she had a couple of experiences at her house.
Did you ever do light as a feather, stiff as a board?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, my God. That's, like, the most fun.
I know it's, like, a trick of the mind, but it's...
It
like,
is.
Oh, it's
so fun.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now I want to watch The Craft. But it was very much that sort of thing, and I was by this point, I think I was in high school, and I was sort of, like, the school witch, and it's like anybody who was interested like came to me because I was very open about it.
Yeah.
To the point where it was like I'd been open for a long time, to the point where I think I started learning in like middle school, and I was pretty open about it. And I tried to hide it at first, and then I think somebody blabbed, and like rumors got spread around.
Somebody blabbed.
Yeah,
and you were like, "Let's set the record straight. Yeah. I only sacrifice goats on one day of the year."
So. Because I live in the Bible Belt, and I grew up in the Bible Belt, I literally got death threats from other kids. And, you know,
which
all
is
this
insane.
Yeah. All this kind of stuff, and, you know, told I was going to go to hell, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's what people do.
Yeah, that's what people do. When they don't understand, they react with fear and rage.
Or they call you a dyke. And you get very confused thinking that it's a landform in the water. And then you're like, oh, that's why you say I smell fishy. I get it. Takes a while for things to...
But yeah, kids are cruel. But, I mean, when I got into high school, it got a little bit better.
Yeah, because people are starting to think for themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
So, I mean, people kind of, you know, if they didn't like it, they just sort of left me alone. And I actually had some people who were of very strict other faiths who would come to me and just like openly talk to me and discuss it with me. And even though they didn't believe in it themselves and they thought it wasn't right, they didn't shame me for it or
that's how
treat
everyone
me
should
differently.
be.
They actually were some of my good friends.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us took like art classes together, of course.
Yeah.
And so, this is stuff that we would talk about. And I learned a lot about, their faiths too through that, which I thought was really, really cool. And, so, I was sort of like the school witch, and everybody would come to me when they were interested or wanted to learn. And, at that point, I think a lot more people were getting interested in it. And, so people would come and talk to me, and I'd like recommend books or something and, give them material and say, yeah, absolutely. So I was just sort of like that person. And, my friend was very interested in paranormal activity and witchcraft and stuff. And she, excuse me, I had coffee, so now I've got like burps.
Burps! Coffee burps are the best, to be fair.
Yes. But, she started kind of, like, learning and studying with me, and she and I almost had, like, this, like, sister close relationship. Mm-hmm. And, like, I would constantly, like, spend a lot of time with her and spend time over at her house. Like, her mom became like a mom to me.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's
and,
real nice.
She lived in this older house, and, there were a couple spirits there. Her mom was very open to it, too. And would even, like,
my
listen
mom
to
is
me
that type of mom.
Yeah, and, like, ask questions and stuff. Mm-hmm. And, she also, was descendant from, the Cherokee and stuff, too. So a lot of my knowledge comes from her. Yeah. Because, I lost my connection to that, very young when my grandmother died, when I was very, very young. Yeah. So, she kind of taught me some of what I know. Yeah. Which was really cool.
That is very cool.
I sort of felt like we had a sort of family connection, even though we weren't necessarily related by blood that we know of. Yeah. But it was really strange. It was just... She just, this friend just decided, when all of us were there, and that she wanted to go check out this old boys' school. Mm-hmm. So we walked down over there, and, we walked down to...
Did you have to jump a fence?
No.
Oh.
There were no fences at this point. There are some now.
Okay.
And the police department is right across the street, so don't do this.
Don't do it. Don't do it. If there's a police department across the street from fences, don't do that.
Don't do it.
That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, especially when a reform school is directly behind it as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's no fences at this time, so you can just walk in.
Yeah. So there's actually an old church with an even older graveyard behind it, and we kind of went over there and walked around first, and I don't really get any vibes there.
First of all, a graveyard should be the last place because people are at rest.
Yeah.
And so
I've never really gotten spooky vibes or haunted vibes from many graveyards. I think usually when you get I think usually when you get a haunting that's in a graveyard, it either has to do with the land that was there before the graveyard was there, or it has to deal with...
Or maybe there was some construction and some graves got moved around.
That happens a lot.
Maybe that might happen to you on Saturday. You don't know.
Oh, man. Ancient Indian burial grounds.
I'm not going to take you to those. That would be insane.
I've been to those.
That would be crazy.
I've been to those that are many, many hundreds of years old.
We're just going to go somewhere where they think thousands of people were buried, but they only have marked graves for like 300.
Ooh, interesting.
I will tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. The tea. I'll spill the tea there.
You have to spill it there because I want to go into it kind of blind.
Yeah,
and just see what I get.
Yeah.
It'll be great. I'm very much like I want to experiment. I want to like be as blank as I can. And kind of like when we went to St. Albans, it's like I want to go in as blind as I can. We can't go in.
The sad thing is we can't go in when it's like super dark. Because they do have a time when they close.
That's okay. If there's something there, I'll probably feel it, whether it's daytime or nighttime. It's fine. Yeah. It's just I think it's easier for me to pick up on things when it's dark because energies are more at rest. Yeah. So but if there also is something else there,
because then my camera will pick it up because we don't have night vision.
Yes. So I kind of went over there and I didn't really feel anything, and then they took me down this like kind of cul-de-sac type street, and I got this really weird feeling, and it's like I got this like tightness around my neck, and I just felt like this depression, and it's just like, oh God, it was like walking through like really thick mud, and I kind of told them this, and they said there was a boy who hung himself in that house 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So then they take me over to this reform school. And first there's this really beautiful stone church that's on one side of the street. And we went there first. And I just felt so at peace.
Aww.
And it was like this really beautiful area. And I'm just like, I just want to come here and like sit and meditate and just like hang out. Yeah. You know? And then there's this stone bridge that actually goes across the road and connects over
really nice.
to like these old buildings that used to be the reform school.
Yeah.
And we walk, it's actually like a good bit of land that all these buildings are on. I'll have to take you by and show you sometime. As soon as we like go across the bridge and I step foot on that land, I start to feel very uneasy. Yeah. Like getting to that other side of the street, I just felt like gross. Yeah. And we walk all the way down the length of this property to the building at the very, very end, closest to the intersection. And they decide they want to go into this building at the very end.
Oh, no.
Because the door is wide open.
Yeah.
And,
well, if the door's wide open, why don't we just walk in? Fucking crazies.
They all, pile in there, and we've all got our, like, cell phones out for light and everything.
Oh, Lord. Millennials.
Yes. Because nobody thought to bring a flashlight.
You guys.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I stepped through, in this building, through this doorway, and I feel ill. I don't feel good. Like, I get that very, like, negative energy, just, like, I felt, like, afraid and violated and dominated.
For sure.
And I just felt absolutely petrified. Yeah. And, we were at the base of some stairs. So they all wanted to go upstairs. Which I am immediately going, I don't know how sturdy these are. Is that a really good idea?
Yeah, exactly.
These buildings are not certified safe. Actually, they're the exact opposite.
Yeah. They're certified abandoned.
Yeah.
No one's been in here.
But they all want to go upstairs, and I get about halfway up the stairs.
And you're like,
and my vision starts to swim, and I have just enough time to turn tail and run out the door before I projectile vomit. Oh. And I feel so ill, and I will not step back foot back
of course, no.
It was this kind of like oppressive, dark energy that I can't really equate to anything else.
Like getting the shit beat out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So years later, after I've, like, every time I drive by this place, I, put up my protective, like, energy bubble, and I'm like, don't fuck with me,
Yeah. Stay away from me, I'll stay away from you.
Yeah. Leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah.
My boyfriend at the time, the guy who used to, hang out with Brian, I had told him this story because he knew, the girl that I'd been friends with. And he sent me this story that was in, like, a local publication. And it was all about this reform school and the history of it. And it was about how years later, men were coming forth who had actually been enrolled in the school, who were talking about the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, and even some medical procedures, like sterilization and stuff, that were performed on them against their will while they were enrolled there.
To, like, think, like, that happened...
Yeah.
So, like, recently that these people could even...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It happened back in the 50s, I think.
That's so insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that those buildings were in use up until like the 70s, I want to say. Like, I think one of the rooms up there, they had said had like a ping pong table or something in it. So,
that's just insane.
Yeah.
But you get you read that and then you're like, oh, that's why I felt that way.
Because there was no reason other than the reform school being there that I should feel that sort of energy.
Yeah.
But now it makes sense. Like, that made more sense to me than just the reform school being there. So,
because it wasn't like just an authoritative feeling.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Because it was one of those things where it's like, that's one of the ones where I really questioned myself. Because I was like, why would I feel like so ill? Like, why would that cause such a negative reaction to me? Like, that doesn't make sense. You know, this was a place where people came and learned a trade to, like, better themselves. A lot of times, kids who were in, you know, bad situations where they'd lost their parents or, you know, were in, who grew up very poor, you know, this was a way for them to better themselves. This was a good thing. And now we find out not so much because of the abuse that went on there. So, it just...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
That was one that I've definitely experienced that was a little bit spooky. And then, you know, on the other side of things, you know, I used to live in this, I'll say it, it was a double wide, and my boyfriend at the time and I were renting a room there with a friend. His dad owned the property. And it was a really bad situation. But he used to be involved with a really rough crowd. And there was a guy... Just the spirit of this man who was just very lost and sad and very dark, but not like, I don't know, I felt like he could be violent, but only if provoked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like he was very unstable.
Yeah. That sounds like people that are alive.
Yeah. And, I always got the feeling that he died of an overdose. I never confronted the person who owned the place about it because I didn't want to bring up any bad memories or anything.
Right.
But in the same space, you know, there was this older woman who, you know, was very sweet and grandmotherly and kind. And I felt like she just kind of like looked after us. And she used to leave us pennies all over the house.
Pennies everywhere.
She used to leave us pennies all the time.
Pennies.
It was very sweet.
All for you. You can have all the pennies.
So it's like
treat yourself to a piece of gum, young lady.
It's kind of like when, you know, you go to your grandparents' house and they give you like a quarter. Yeah. And that's what it felt like. Yeah. You know? So it was just like,
please go treat yourself to a bubble gum, if you will.
It was just her way of being really sweet. And
that's so funny.
I think I had I was just sitting there talking with him one night, and he brought up the fact that, you know, in the room that Nick and I were staying in, my boyfriend at the time, that there was an older woman who passed in that room.
Oh,
yeah, and I was like, oh, she's sweet.
She's not angry that you're there. She's just like very nice.
Yeah, she liked us.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's really sweet.
So I mean, I kind of liked being there because it was like both sides of the coin.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have this darker energy who's very sad and lost, and I feel like he was very dependent on, you know, illegal drugs and stuff. And then I have this really sweet older woman who, you know, like passed in her sleep. You know, who leaves us pennies. Yeah. You know, so I feel like that's really kind of this great like summation of, you know, both sides of what the paranormal can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I encounter some really sweet people too. Sometimes, you know, just when I'm riding, you know, down the street, I'll just get, I feel like I get people in the back of my car and I get like this pressure and it's like, oh, hey, there's somebody riding in my back seat. Yeah. And it's like, I'll just tell them, hey, how you doing? And they'll kind of tell me about themselves and I'm like, that's cool. I hear you. And they're like, okay, I'm going to go now. Bye. Yeah. And they just leave. Yeah. They just want to be heard. They just want to, you know? Yeah. So it's, and I know that sounds absolutely nuts. No. But it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, that's just a fact of, you know, life for me. It's just something that I've always kind of dealt with, especially ever since I've, like, opened myself up to working with Hekate. It's just like, that's just a fact of life.
She's like, that's
just the water bowl.
Don't do that to me, cats. There was a ding, ding, ding
when
sound.
I first put that water bowl out, it sounds kind of like a knocking on the door.
Oh,
and it
absolutely sounds like a knocking on the door.
And I heard that for the first time, like, in the middle of the night when I was here by myself with the cats. And it freaked me out very bad for the first night. And it was like, what the hell is that? So I went and I think I had my mace, because my keys hang up next to the door, and I have this can of mace. Yeah. So I had that in my hand, and I'm ready to, like, pepper spray somebody. And I'm, like, looking at the door, and there's nobody there.
And you're like, God damn it, ghost.
And I'm like, is this a ghost or is it something else? And then I think I hear it back from the kitchen, and I'm like, oh. Now I feel stupid.
Yeah. But don't feel stupid, because, like, oh my God. Spooky. Spooky.
I'm glad it spooked you too. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Well, it's a spooky sound. It sounds like someone's knocking on your door.
And I mean, we have been talking about spooky stuff.
That's true. That's fair. If there's any window knocking, I'm peacing out.
I understood.
Leaving.
I mean, I will too, because I don't want to go through that again.
So I have a question regarding St. Albans. So we're actually going to talk about it more in depth, like, this upcoming week. Because we're going to be putting out part 2 of St. Albans. If you don't know, we have YouTube videos that we post, Not Another Paranormal Show videos on, and we're going to do part 2 of St. Albans Sanatorium. You can go watch part 1 now. But I have a question relating not to the events that took place, but to a specific experience. Okay. So, in St. Albans, we had these stations where we got to hang out with several different people in different spots. Yes. And the very first spot that we went to was the bowling alley. And how did you feel overall there?
I did not feel good there.
Okay. So
because the first time we went down into the bowling alley, I did not feel a good presence there. Mm-hmm. And I started...
Was that prior...
to when we went down there for the...
Because we had a tour.
Yeah.
Right, we had a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Where they really didn't tell us much about the history. They just kind of said, this area is kind of active, this kind of stuff happens here.
Yeah, well, I think they just kind of wanted us to have, like, a... Because there was supposed to be a separate history tour, and we just ended up not doing that. Yeah. We were like, let's just go for the paranormal. I kind
of want to go back now and do a history tour. Because I want to know, especially more about some of these areas. But there are some areas where it's like, I don't want to go back because of the experiences that I had there, because they were very negative. Mm-hmm. But there are some areas where it was a very positive experience. Mm-hmm. Look at you, Sahira. So Brittany is holding my cat, and she's petting her, and she's just being so good.
She's so cute.
She's so cute.
So my question was,
yes,
in the first area, there was another person who is sensitive.
Yes. Well, there were a couple.
Yes. Right. So how have you ever experienced that or been around someone else that is sensitive?
Oh, yeah.
And then you... How did you... Okay, my question is, did you feel what she was feeling? Did you...
One of them, yes. One of them, no.
Okay. All right.
So I very much felt and picked up on a lot of the same things that Rachel was picking up on. Mm-hmm. The other woman, not as much.
She was very interesting. That's why I wanted to ask you about her.
Okay.
Because...
I did not experience the same things that she experienced.
Her, how can I put this? Her, like, the things that she was picking up seemed very specific, and it was really interesting to encounter someone like that, who was just very much like, oh, there's someone here, their name is Daniel, and just be, like, utterly and completely confident. And I can't really refute that because I'm not sensitive. Right. And I'm not a psychic. Right. So I can't be like, Daniel's not here. His name is Ronald. You know what I mean?
I it's one of those things where it's like, I never really get names because I feel that...
Well, we got one name.
Yeah.
We did. And I picked up on that name the moment that you picked up on the name. I feel like we both knew it was Henry.
Yeah.
And, like, I knew it from the H. And I was like, that's Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one name that really came through very strong.
Yeah.
But that was in a completely different area.
Mm-hmm.
And with a completely different technique.
Yes. This woman didn't really implement anything.
It was just her own intuition that she was following.
It was her own thing.
I don't really work that way.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it's just that I'm inexperienced or I question myself too much, but I don't really get, like, stuff that I feel is concrete. I will tell you my impressions of things, but I usually don't deal in absolutes because, I mean, I'm impressionable. You know, I'm human. I'm not without, you know, I'm not a machine. There is absolutely room for contamination there.
Yeah.
As looking at this scientifically, which is how I wanted to go into this. Which is strange saying that as someone who is sensitive.
Yeah.
Who is relying on, you know, her just like impressions of a place. It's like, how can you look at that as scientific? But I wanted to do that as much as I could.
Right. Yeah.
But I really didn't get, like, names. I got, like, events that happened and feelings, and I would get someone's gender, someone's age.
Yeah.
Maybe sort of what they looked like.
Yeah.
But I never get names.
Yeah.
I very rarely get names.
Interesting.
Because I feel like that part is not as important to the spiritual being that is there.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how, like, that's just a fragment of
a person, and it's just, like, the title that you use, right?
Yeah.
It's not the person.
To, you know, like, signify, like, this flesh prison that you're, like, stuck in, and that's how people address you.
Exactly.
I just... Now, if I was going to address a spirit, I feel like that's where it might be a little bit more, like, what would you want to be called?
Right.
You know? But that could be something that manifests as something that they were called in life, if they liked it, or something else, if they didn't like what they were called.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's not something that I ever really got. I think they really just want to tell me about themselves, and names rarely come up.
Yeah.
So
how did you feel about her whole approach?
It's just not something I personally identify with.
Okay. I was very confused.
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't feel the same things that she felt. So it's very hard for me to say if she was accurate or not. I mean,
I wasn't looking for accuracy. I was more like looking for...
Because I don't want to say that she was wrong, because I just may not be picking up on the same things that she's picking up on.
But I was just confused why she was just kind of doing her own... I noticed a lot of the people there were just kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah. It very much was that way.
She was just, like, announcing to the room, like, what was going on psychically. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing that and not explaining anything to us. And so, I don't know, it was very isolating isolated her to the point.
She's just used to going into investigations that way, where people are coming to her with, you know, questions, and they want her to answer them. She's used to being a tool that announces to the room, and I think that's just the way that she's used to operating.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Rachel and I, we just kind of sit back and we just kind of let things come to us, and we just try to, like, evaluate, and we're just like, we put the pieces of the puzzle together. Which I feel that, you know, this other woman did too, but in a different way. Was her name Deborah?
Something like that. It started with a D.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was just like, I was interested in her approach.
Yeah.
But also, she didn't really explain herself very well. It wasn't like she, you know what I mean? Because she didn't really say, like, oh, I'm going to open myself up, and she didn't really do a ritual. She didn't really, like, I realize it's all mental.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, it would be nice to know, like, what the fuck you're doing with the spirits, Deborah?
Yeah.
What the fuck you doing?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It was interesting. I just wanted to get your perspective on it, because it was very different.
It's a very different way from the way that I operate, even though she and I are doing a very similar thing.
Right, yeah.
It could be that she's just more adept at it than I am, because she has more practice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like Rachel and I are a little bit younger. and we're of a different generation, so I think maybe we just process things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I really liked Rachel's use of like Frank's box.
Oh,
I'm very
Frank's box.
interested in Frank's box. If I were to pursue investigating more often, I would love to get my hands on Frank's box.
Yeah,
and be
those
able to
would be
work
cool.
with that.
That would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Oh my gosh, this has been quite a while.
It has.
So
We've
I think
talked very long, but
we did.
I have so many like paranormal stories, and it's like these are just like the main ones.
Yeah. But those were good main ones.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing those with me. I'm sorry I only have like the one.
No, it's okay.
Like the one razzle dazzle.
That's all right. I think it's one of those things where it's like everybody experiences the paranormal differently.
Well, you went out actively seeking it, and I just because I've never had like those experiences except for that one time.
It's funny because it's like I never saw myself as like actively seeking it. I actually tried to avoid it as much as possible.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's like stuff would just kind of like happen around me, and I keep thinking back to that like old woman in St. Augustine,
Yeah.
Where it's just like stuff would just follow me around and happen all the time. I feel like St. Albans was the first time where I actively like said, okay, I'm going to enter a place and I'm going to see what I get. Mm-hmm. Like that was a very different experience for me. And just some of the people that my mother and some of my friends are just like, I cannot believe you went in there, like at all. And they're not sensitive. They've never had paranormal experiences of their own,
right?
But it's something where it's like just looking at pictures, they're like, no,
yeah.
And not even spooky pictures, but like the beautiful pictures they took of the outside.
Yeah,
they're like, I ain't going in there.
Well, they know that it's a sanatorium, and they're like, "Ooh, a sanatorium," but they don't know.
Yeah,
they just have the worst conjuration in their mind.
A lot of times, sanatoriums are where people would go to try to get well.
Yeah,
so it's
this, despite what people would believe, is not like a place where people would get lobotomies.
Yeah,
they did have some shock therapy.
Yes,
but people still do shock therapy today.
That's
and
true.
They do it to relieve people of like depressions and things like that. So it's not like they didn't do lobotomies there. Mm-hmm. It was actually an extremely like when it was first built, St. Albans had like equipment that is still used today, even though it's like 100 years later. They still have things.
The doctor who founded it, was it Dr. King?
Yes, Dr. King.
He was very much a patient advocate, and he wanted to go out and seek the best kinds of treatment and the most humane kinds of treatment for people who were ill.
It wasn't like... There were crazy people. There were people who were legitimately crazy, but then there was also people who were there just for ridiculous things, like... Yeah. Not ridiculous things. I've met a lot of
people who were legitimately certified crazy, and it's like, they can be very sweet, kind, funny people, So it's just that they have some differences in their brain that we don't have, that we don't understand.
Yeah, so, for sure. But thank you for sharing them with me. Yeah. Perhaps later on this week we can have more spooky stories shared.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about St. Albans. I have a lot to
talk about. God, yes! Oh my God.
I had so many experiences there. I could definitely go on at least...
We could do it for quite a while.
Oh yeah, at least another 3 hours.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening with us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We will see you next time.
Next time.
Bye!